Welcome to the Mother Together podcast. This is Tiana.
This is Ariel, and we're two moms empowering other mamas not to settle in their motherhood, relationships, careers, and self-worth.
Well, today I'm going to be interviewing the lovely, my life wife, my co-founder of L&L, co-host of Mother Together, and we're going to talk about how she is a six-figure VA. Was that a good enough intro?
I think it'll do, I guess.
Okay, so let's just go and talk about how you got started into the VA world.
Okay, so I got started 8 years ago whenever my son was 6 months old and I wanted to work from home and wanted to be an assistant, but didn't really know what that would look like. So I just Googled virtual assistant, not really knowing that that was an actual role. And I found out a lot of information, realized that it was a real thing, and basically the first thing that came up was a company that hired virtual assistants. So it was called Zirtual. It still exists, but it was a different company at the time when I worked for them. And I applied. It was just completely life-changing to find out that there are all these remote virtual work opportunities, and I was just so happy to find the opportunity, and I started working for them, making probably, I think $10, maybe $12 an hour. It was really, really low, but it was also
really low.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was part-time, so I was barely working, but I remember it being such a big deal, and we were on food stamps, and, Zared was working full-time, but, we were a whole family and just didn't have a lot of income at first, so it was a big deal for me to have an income, and I remember Zared being so proud of me. He brought home flowers and as if I was still 16, a Cosmo magazine and just some cute stuff, and he was really proud of me. And then I remember when I was able to buy our first real purchase from it, and I was still working for this company, so I wasn't making a ton of money, but I had gone from part-time to full-time, and I was able to buy my first new car. I'd never had a new car before, and I bought my first car. It was just so cool. And then I got pregnant with Lorelai, and I was 6 months pregnant, and the company closed their doors overnight. So over 300 employees let go via email. It was this huge thing. If you Google Zirtual shutdown, I guess it would have been 2014 or something, you'll see some articles about it and just the startup world kind of freaking out about this unicorn they've been bragging about for the past several years. Anyway, so long story short, I started working independently as a VA, and that's when I started making real money. So I started working independently from there.
Well, first I want to say thank you for Googling virtual assistant, because my career and 100 other ladies in our program, they wouldn't be VAs. We would all still be working 9 to 5s or stay-at-home mamas, whatever we were all doing before. And second, I want to say Zared is the sweetest husband.
Yeah, he really is.
What husband actually thinks about oh, my wife started a job. I'm going to get her flowers and a magazine. I'm going to bring this to her. He's pretty great.
He's
guys.
The best.
He is. Okay, so do you use your degree? Because, you do have a college degree.
So I hate on my degree a lot. If you follow me at all, I do talk about how a college degree is not necessary to be successful and make money in life. I have a public relations degree with an almost minor in marketing. I don't use it. I feel like I use the experience that I got in college more than I do the actual degree and what I learned, outside of just the experience that I gained and the professionalism I gained based on the internships and things like that I had. So it's not something that I would say is necessary. I could have done it without it.
My next question is, we already said you're a six-figure earner, but how much do you make? And this is not to brag, but this is just to put awareness out there that you can make really good money from home.
Yes. I've made different levels of income throughout my career, but I've made six figures for actually, I remember when the first time I started making six figures, and I called you and I was like, what should I do? Because I had a full-time job, remote executive assistant job, and I got offered this other position, and I called Tiana and I was like, I'm thinking about just doing them both for a while. And you were like, oh my gosh, Ariel, you're going to be making real money. And you're like, are you sure you can work 2 full-time jobs? And then we know what full-time jobs remote mean. It doesn't actually mean full-time. It'll be fine. Yeah. Right. So that's when I first started making 6 figures. And so then it would have been around 110,000. And I think I had benefits with one of the companies. So my story is a little bit different because I was able to have that opportunity to be on payroll. but it was probably 2 kids ago. So at least 4 years ago.
Like, yeah, about 4 years ago.
So I've been doing that, and then I quit one of them to be able to start Laptop and Littles.
Okay, so how does your hubby feel about that? Because I know you're getting some like backlash from some people, you know, on TikTok and thinking that you're like bashing your husband, but really they have no idea who Zared is because it's Zared is the one.
Yeah, so he's the instigator of all of this, honestly. So when we first had like a housewarming party at our house before the one we live in now, I had this cute little office, and he was like giving a tour of the house to our friends that had like never been in the house before, and he's walking them around, and I'm in the kitchen, like I said, small house, so I could hear him, you know, and he opens the door to the sunroom. He's like, and this is where my wife makes all of our money, and was just like bragging about me and like calling me his sugar mama and like all these things, like not in a derogatory way at all, like you got to know my husband, but he was just like very supportive and just proud. I asked him one day, I was like, why do you tell people that I make more money, you know? And he was like, well, because you do. So he never really had any sort of feeling about it. Like he was never ashamed of it or anything. Like it was just a very factual thing to him, and he was proud of it. Still, I mean, he has worked a couple different jobs since then. He's worked in nonprofits for a while. So he worked in a factory for a long time after college. And then when he finally was like using his degree and doing something he wanted, he's working with a nonprofit. The next job that he had was another nonprofit. So, you know, the odds were not in his favor to make more money than me. But now he's actually in the most typical 9-to-5 job. He's a banker. He manages a bank. You know, he makes good money, but still doesn't make as much as me. So it's always, now it's kind of like a joke. Like, when are you going to get there to like, you know, hit that?
And now he has us both joking with him, you know.
And he doesn't care at all. I mean, he's very happy for, you know, our family and like our household.
Yeah, he's pretty great. Okay, so how many hours do you work? So when you say, okay, I'm a 6-figure VA, but how many hours are you working throughout the week or, you know, a typical day?
So it really, again, varies by day. Some days I'm working 8 hours, and some days I'm probably, I would say on average 4 to 6. It really just depends on like how many meetings I'm having, because if I have a couple of meetings, then the work kind of piles up.
So I know this already because I'm here, but for all the ladies listening in and they have no idea how you handle this, how do you juggle your 4 kids and your clients? Yes, 2 of them are going to go to school, but for the summer when they're all 4 here, how do you do this?
Again, this is something that's going to vary by day. I want to be very clear that there are some days I don't juggle it. Some days I really do have to just focus on work, and my kids, you know, it's chaos. But then there are some days where I'm like, oh, there's not a lot of time sensitive, urgent things going on with work. So I'm going to spend more focus cuddling with my kids or taking them to the pool or whatever it is. So I guess that's how I juggle it, is I prioritize my day based on what I know needs to be done. So if there's stuff with work that I'm like, I know this absolutely needs to be done, I will try and knock out as much as I can in the morning before my kids are awake and like super active. So it's really just a sprinkle throughout my day. And then my kids are the priority the rest of the day.
So what kind of tasks did you do starting out?
So starting out, I think the main things that I was doing was research and calendar management. So like coordinating calendars. And I remember thinking that was just so terrifying to be talking to these clients. But once I started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun, because I'm talking to these people that I would never talk to in another life. And even though I'm just like exchanging availability on their calendar, it was just cool to, I don't know, have some small talk via email, because I'm an introvert. So that's the only way I'm going to even want to have small talk. So that was fun. But yeah, probably calendar management and maybe making purchases every once in a while, and then research.
So 8 years later, what are you doing now?
Now, obviously, I do coach women, but I'm doing more. I'm an executive assistant, but I've turned more into like a marketing assistant. So the clients that I still work with, I'm doing marketing tasks. So I'm still like an executive assistant, but in the marketing department. So I do a lot of scheduling emails, editing emails, posting blog posts, editing websites sometimes. I don't really do as much calendar management anymore, but just a lot of like day-to-day like management of like our marketing department.
So what kind of clients do you work for?
So that's varied too. I think that it's all stayed pretty similar, like in the startup world. I know some VAs will work with completely opposite, but I think mine has stayed in the startup world. I've worked for some like in the tech startup. Now I work for another startup, which is like a marketing like agency software type.
So who has been your least favorite client? Or have you
Oh
had
man,
one?
yes, I can think of her name and everything right now.
We're not gonna disclose
No, I'm
that.
not gonna disclose it. But it was while I was working for Zirtual, which is another thing. Like, you know, when you're working for an agency, so that's one thing that's a con about working for an agency. So they market, you know, to find the clients. So if they assign a client, most of the time, unless it's just like an obvious not fit, then you know you're kind of stuck with them. Like you kind of have to deal with it. And I had this woman, like I knew I didn't like vibe with her well, but it was fine, whatever. But she was a micromanager, but thankfully my manager and I had a really good relationship. And she was like, I understand, like let's just get her off your hands.
Last question for you is, what's your favorite thing about your career?
I have a lot of favorite things, but probably, I mean, my favorite thing is, you know, being able to be a stay-at-home mom and still be able to work. Being able to like wake up with my kids and have slow mornings and just slow days if I want to. It's just, honestly, it's empowering as a mother.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Mother Together podcast.
If you want to hang out with us in real life, join our Facebook group, Mother Together. Go to Facebook, search Mother Together in groups, click join, and make sure to answer those questions.
See you in the group.